first vice president of the collectivity says we need to remain vigilant. National Alliance Member of Parliament says there is a misconception of the purpose of the stimulus plan. But first up, Prime Minister meets with French counterpart to discuss COVID-19 realities. Those are the headlines for Tuesday, May the 12th, 2020. And welcome. This is SXM Daily News. I'm Valerie Van Putten. And as usual, we have a packed newscast for you this evening, so let's get started. In our first story, Prime Minister Silveria in her national address of Monday, May the 11th, 2020, said that she met with her counterparts on French in Maarten to discuss the COVID-19 realities and the border controls, among other topics. However, because of time constraints, they will be meeting with each other again this week to talk about border controls and the reopening of schools.
I would like to update that in our weekly meeting held with the French counterparts, I sat together with Madame Préfet Sylvie Faucheur, President Gibbs, First Vice President Valérie Damasso, as well as the Ministers of Justice, the Minister of Justice, Anna Richardson, and of Health, Richard Pantophlet. Together with our support staff, we had a discussion pertaining to our updates on the COVID-19 realities, including the health situation, border controls, and the de-escalation measures which we are both carrying out. As a result of our meeting today and not having enough time to go in depth, we have organized a second meeting for this week specifically to go into the discussions on our border controls. This is a situation whereby, and also the reopening of schools, as we have children on both sides of the island needing or probably wanting to go to school.
And in her national address, the Prime Minister also announced that a multidisciplinary task force was established whereby criteria was looked at based on the health aspect, the social need, and demand. She expounds.
As such, we have moved forward, and as you know, a multidisciplinary task force was established whereby criteria was looked at based on the health aspect, based on the social need and demand, as well as economic need and demand. And a rating was given whereby we came up with 4 phases. We had expected to move directly into phase 2, but seeing that several new businesses came online that qualified to be open in phase 1, we felt that it was imperative to give them at least a week to get things up and running. Of course, when we state that in a particular phase, a business is allowed to be opened, that does not mean that it is mandatory for them to be open. Businesses that are allowed to be open during this week, May 11th, which you can see on our screen, may only do so once all the guidelines are in place and the business or entity agrees to open to serve the public. As such, entities or businesses can decide to defer their opening to a later date as well. So, any persons requiring a particular service or are questioning whether a service that they need is open should check to ensure before leaving their homes. The guidelines have been printed and shared, and stakeholders continue to meet to finalize preparations and plans to be able to open as per the dates listed. Again, I must mention that many have decided, and especially as it pertains to the daycare centers, to defer their opening until they can properly put all guidelines in place. I can update from the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports that they are having meetings together with the school boards to determine when and how the schools would reopen if they were to reopen. And they are mainly focused, as of next week when they're supposed to, on the exam students. As several exams have come back online, they would like that all students get the opportunity to do so.
The government's proposed cost-cutting measures presentation that was to be presented earlier today was postponed and will now be presented in tomorrow's Council of Ministers press briefing at 9:30 a.m. The presentation is to be done by the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, Silveria Jacobs, and Minister of Finance, the Honorable Ardwell Irion. And in other news, this time from French Saint Maarten, in the Collectivité's weekly press briefing on French Saint Maarten, First Vice President of the Collectivité, Valerie Damaso, gave an update of the current events and the COVID-19 cases. The First Vice President said that we are entering a decisive stage in the COVID-19 crisis. Because of another positive case that was detected over the weekend, it only confirms the pressing need to remain vigilant.
We are entering, as of today, in a decisive stage in the COVID-19 crisis, which has been affecting our territory for the last 2 months. We insist on the decisive aspect because the gradual end of confinement does not mean that the crisis is over. The discovery of a new positive case detected this weekend in St. Maarten confirms the pressing need to remain vigilant and to act in compliance with the barrier measures that mutually protect us all. We must all be aware of the fact that the health situation on our territory is still very fragile. The virus is circulating less, but it has not disappeared. The PCR screening campaign that we have implemented in partnership with the hospital, the regional health agency, the state and partner association was launched on May 4th. At the end of the first week, 1 test for the time being has come back positive out of 80 tests carried out in the district on symptomatic volunteers. The patient is currently being taken care of, and the regional health agency is following up with those who may have been in contact with this person. This result should call to order those who are considering lowering their guard as we gradually come out of confinement. But please be careful, as there is still a week left of screening in this first phase. We must therefore wait until May 18th for these results to be finalized and provided by the Regency Health Agency. Again, we invite all people experiencing flu-like symptoms, fever, and stomach ache to take advantage of this mobile screening device. The results are anonymous and allows the patient to benefit from an early and better adapted care. It allows to protect the people around them as well. We have to be extremely careful. A return to the epidemic is always possible. Some countries have had the painful experience. Therefore, we ask you to continue your efforts and continue to respect the barrier measures. These protective gestures are all the more crucial as we enter the deconfinement phase. We have said it every time there is a before and will be an after COVID-19. Our habits must change. To successfully break out of confinement and allow the gradual rebirth of St. Maarten's economy, we must act with full responsibility in public spaces and comply with all the health security instructions recommended by the Regional Health Agency. Confinement was a unique and memorable experience for each and every one of us. We are proud of how we handled this period of deprivation of liberty as a whole, and you did it in accordance to the instruction, and we thank you for it. We understand your eagerness, but we ask you to approach deconfinement wisely, without taking unnecessary risks, taking the time to prepare for this return to life in the society according to the procedures put in place by the government.
And we will have more of the First Vice President of the Collectivité in tomorrow's edition of SXM Daily News. It should also be noted that the Collectivité's weekly press briefing is always attended by the President of the Collectivité, Mr. Daniel Gibbs, who gives his address in French. And in more news at this time, Head of the Public Health Department, Dr. Randus Fenner Arnell, gave an update of the COVID-19 testing in the districts. The public health head says that our turnaround time in receiving results has decreased to 24 hours, which is in line with other testing labs regionally and internationally.
Today, the team was in Belvedere, Bishop Hill, and they started in Middle Region. In total, the community volunteers canvassed 5 districts. In these districts, they went door to door by 1,915 homes in approximately 14 areas, 14 neighborhoods. These households consisted of 5,132 persons. When speaking to the persons at those households, the community volunteers identified 36 persons with self-reported symptoms. During a follow-up phone call by CPS staff with these 36 persons, 21 reported respiratory symptoms and were subsequently tested. One person tested positive for COVID-19 and 3 results are pending. 10 indicated that they did not have any symptoms. 3 persons had chronic conditions and were advised to contact their family physician. And 2 persons refused to be tested and after repeated follow-up phone calls still refused to be tested. These persons are, however, advised and are being monitored to isolate themselves. Updates based on the prerequisites as outlined by RIVM and WHO. St. Maarten has ensured that we have received a sufficient testing capacity. As such, our turnaround time now for receiving results has decreased to 24 hours, which is in line with the other testing labs regionally and internationally. Our monitoring system has increased significantly as CPS has increased its capacity in volunteers who are actively in contact with our isolated and quarantined persons. Our curative capacity has been increased with the dedicated pavilion and hospitainer at SMMC. They are both exclusively being used right now to treat COVID-19 positive patients. With the information forthcoming from our health frontline workers over the past week, fortunately, while CPS continues to test persons, there have been no new positives.
And still to come, a member of the anti-poverty platform says he is concerned about the healthiness and hygiene of restaurants. We'll have the details of that story and much more when SXM Daily News returns.
GEBE has been faithfully serving the communities of St. Maarten, powering your home and our economy. Come rain or shine, our qualified team of professionals are working hard 24 hours a day to provide you and your family with safe, reliable electricity and water. We use the latest technologies and test our products daily to maintain the highest international standards. Our friendly staff is always there to assist you, whether in person, over the phone, or online. We are committed to constantly improving our products and services, making them more efficient, effective, and environmentally friendly to serve you better today and our next generation of clients tomorrow. GEBE, powering a brighter future.
Our friend Megawati is here with tips to save you energy. 1. Turn your airco temperature up. 2. Use a ceiling fan instead. 3. Buy energy-saving products. Save some green with NVGEBE.
And member of the Anti-Poverty Platform and the St. Maarten Consumers Coalition, Alberto Butte, is concerned about the healthiness and the hygiene of the restaurants on the island. Mr. Butte said that COVID-19 never came with a manual, so he doesn't understand why we were restricted to going to the beach, which is needed for our health.
The COVID never came neither with a manual in terms of saying, I'm going to attack you, this is the way things is going to be for you henceforth. But we who are more alert know what this whole strategy is about. One of the big scare also that was brought by the World Health Organization and the world powers was to keep people away from the beaches. When you keep them away from the beaches, you keep them away from the sun, which is vitamin D. When you keep them away from the beaches, there's no way bacteria will live into your nasal system, etc. But why? We had military guarding the beaches for people not to go into the beaches, to swim. Not to hang out and to pass on viruses, but if you tell people to submerge into the salt water, that will surely kill any bacteria that is on your body and disinfect the person. But that was it, and here in St. Maarten is the very same. I keep sending emails to government and ask them, why don't we encourage people only to swim, just to swim and dive, not to hang out on the beach with beach bed, rum, music, and etc. But to really submerge them. We're going to cut the spread of this virus here. Surely we will have an effect on it, because this is a passed down manual by the World Health Organization, cohorts with governments and with systems to really put the public at large in a particular predicament. But that phase over. People now are learning to adapt. now with masks and gloves, etc., and we're going about our business, what next? Are we going to tell them to stay confined for another 2 and 3 weeks until this thing disappears? It's not going to disappear. So we got to get back to living a new life, a new normal life. And that's what we want to encourage government now to let's move into that stage. It has been, and as I propose, for long we had to be refitting businesses. We have a lot of restaurants, even before the COVID, that their bathrooms were not in order. We need to put a team of already existing civil servant match with private sector to do a re-inspection of these places to see that the hygienic situation is acceptable to receive clients. We need to refit restaurants because people got to get back to work. We have to open certain businesses like car parts and etc. with new conditions, similar that applies to supermarket, because we're going to be eating food, but you got to get this economy going, because otherwise worse things will happen. We're going to have so many seeking psychiatric and psychological treatment. We will have so many that will have domestic abuse cases. We'll have social unrest. You understand? But it's about time now that government now come with an economic plan for development, for reopening the economy of St. Maarten.
And the Member of Parliament for the National Alliance, George Pantophlet, says that there is a misconception on the purpose of the stimulus plan. MP Pantophlet says that it is an issue that needs urgent attention and clarification. It has to do with the stimulus plan, specifically the payroll support. Some employers seem to be of the opinion that it is the responsibility of the government to pay their employees. The Member of Parliament spoke to our news department.
There is a misconception taking place in regards to employers and employees concerning the payroll support that the Governor of St. Maarten intends to give to the employers. Apparently, the employees are being told by some employers that they're only going to pay them 60% or 70% or 80%, and the government going to refund them the balance. This is incorrect. According to law, the employer is responsible for paying the employee the full 100%. That's by law. That's laid out in the labor laws. That cannot be changed right now. The fact is, what has to happen after the employers have paid the employee that full of 100%, then based on documentation, actually it should have been presented to the government a while back, after the government has gone through the documentation of the employer to see exactly based on their sales or based on their financial statement and so on, what kind of effect this COVID-19 has had on their finances. Then based on that, some might fall into the 60%, 70%, 80% category. So what government will do, if you pay, once the employer pays the employee 100%, based on the category, government will refund 60, 70, or 80%. So please, to the employees out there and employers, the impression should not be created that government is responsible for paying the payroll of these employees. That is fully the responsibility of the employer. One of the things I appreciate, because we all know that after Hurricane Irma and Maria, how the situation was in St. Maarten, and we got to say, thank God, persons had insurance, had savings and so on, and that helped to kind of rebuild the economy again. And now we have this COVID-19, which is very devastating. But important is that government is trying to support, as a payroll support. It is not government to be paying the salaries of these employees. Another thing which I also realized is that about 900 businesses submitted requests to support. And that is interesting because according to the Chamber of Registry, that about maybe 4,000 or 5,000, I don't know the amount correctly, are registered. So it is interesting to see, based on those 4,000 or 5,000 that have been registered, only about 900 applied for support. It could mean several things. Number one, the documentation is not in order. It means number two, they have not been paying the taxes, whether income tax, turnover tax, wage tax, or the premiums for insurances. Those things are important. Thirdly, financially, they're not able to do so. But the fact is, it is showing right now that the compliance issue with regards to the taxes is not what it's supposed to be. And this is being exposed right now by this particular information requested by government to ensure that the person who requests payroll support are entitled to do so. I want to also say this. Government will do its best in order to mitigate the the pressure on these employers and ensure that employees get what they're entitled to. And I want to say this publicly because the impression is created that government is only interested in an elite part or a certain amount of persons. The governor of St. Maarten, the Parliament of St. Maarten, is responsible for 61,000 or more persons living here, not a selective few. That is the responsibility of government. So I'm asking the people of St. Maarten to please cooperate with the rules. The quicker we follow the rules of social distancing, hand washing, sanitizing, make sure these rules are followed, the quicker we get back to what you would call the new normal. So again, stay home, stop the spread, kill the virus. Be safe and God bless you all.
Now, turning to our weather forecast for May the 12th, 2020. The Atlantic high pressure system will maintain a gentle to moderate wind flow during this forecast period. A relatively stable atmosphere will limit shower activity across the local area. Seas will remain moderate during the next few days. Small craft operators and sea bathers should exercise caution. Outlook through Thursday, midday, fair to partly cloudy with a few passing showers which are possible. Now let's turn to your 3-day forecast. And still to come, Prime Minister gives elucidation to questions from members of Parliament. We'll have the details to that story and more when SXM Daily News returns.
Make use of WIB mobile banking with easy access and direct usage of face recognition, PIN code, or fingerprint. Download WIB mobile banking app and make your transaction from anywhere at any time. For more information, visit wib-bank.net/quick-login.
And as we continue with more news at this time, at the bi-weekly press briefing with the Prime Minister, who is also chair lady of the EOC, Member of Parliament Keisha Maarten says that she is very concerned about whether we are going to pool our resources into buying thousands of tests for testing the community of St. Maarten for COVID-19. MP Maarten wants to understand the government's plan of approach. The Prime Minister, in response to MP Maarten's concerns, said that she will defend the way it is working. She then gave an elucidation to the many other questions that was posed to her.
Okay, thank you, MP Maarten. Thank you, Chair of Parliament. I have been trying to elucidate throughout my presentation, throughout answering the questions, and hopefully when you get the action plans and decisions, you will be able to better see whether it is functioning or it isn't functioning. Based on the commendations I've heard today and in the public, I think it is. But of course, everybody's allowed to have their own opinion. I will defend the way it's working because the discussions are deep. It is with the professionals in the field, and every group is made up of subgroups. Every ESF coordinator is made up of subgroups. And we are taking along, as I've mentioned, proposals made. But because a proposal that is made by an individual doesn't get the go-ahead in its entirety, that doesn't mean it was not properly discussed, debated, and looked at from all angles. The ESF coordinators are professionals in their field, and health comes first, and enforcement of measures comes second. So we looked at each measure and looked at each proposal. Which one was most ideal? Yes, was the one that was either the last name one or the one that was based on districts. Then we looked at which one would be simpler to execute. And then we looked at which one was more feasible to execute. And at the end of the day, it ended up being, instead of 7 districts, 2 for the start until we get more persons. The testing capacity of our community, just like the reality of having 2 telecommunication companies, having only 1 GEBE, for instance. We are a very small population. We know our limitations. We had only 2 ICU beds. Now we have 16. We only had a few doctors. Now we have 30 extra professionals, 35 extra professionals that are helping us. We are getting the help on the medical side that we need, but we have not received enough volunteers and or medical professionals to assist in the mass testing you would like to do. The other day when I demanded of ESF6, I want you to test these 100 and whatever people who are, there were 200 I think at the time, 200 people, test them now. Prime Minister, we do not have the kits. They had to arrive the other day, they did not arrive. What am I supposed to do? I can't kill them. There is nothing they could do.
And still to come, bottlenecks at the Immigration and Border Protection Service not yet resolved. We'll have the details of that story when SXM Daily News returns. And as we end this edition of SXM Daily News for this evening, a review of the Law Enforcement Council has shown that 4 of the 6 recommendations to resolve a number of bottlenecks with regard to admission and expulsion practices at the Immigration and Border Protection Service, IBP, have not been followed up. In 2014, the Law Enforcement Council published a report about the admission and expulsion of foreign nationals in St. Maarten, focusing on applications related to the performance of work. In the report, the Council made 6 recommendations to the Minister of Justice to resolve the identified bottlenecks with regards to admission and expulsion practices at the IBP. Followed up, the recommendation that was followed relates to the IBP upgrading the file registration and follow-up system to DACOS, joined with which, among other things, all files can be traced quickly and better insight is gained into the nature and quantity of the total inflow of foreign nationals to St. Maarten and foreigners residing in St. Maarten. The Council is content with this important step towards digitization. Partially followed up, the recommendation that was partially followed up consists of 2 parts and concerns investing in the training of employees regarding recognizing falsified documents and making use of local knowledge on the one hand, and on the other hand, investigating possibilities for a database containing the most common falsified documents from the most common countries of origin. The Council believes that it is important that the 2 ministries work together to ensure that the recommendation is followed and ensure that the necessary judicial view is not lost whilst conducting a labor market study and in the preparation of policies. The 3rd recommendation that was not followed concerns the formulation and publication of policy. Among other things, the directives of the Ministry of Justice have not yet been updated and published. Also not followed was the recommendation that concerns the harmonization of requirements in legislation, policy, and the application form utilized for applying for a residency permit on the one hand, and the decision and removal practice of the IBP on the other. There is still a discrepancy between the requirements set on the application forms and which documents the IBP requires in practice. The Council will continue to monitor the developments in the coming period, but is cognizant of the difficult times St. Maarten is currently facing due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the strain it is causing on the various judicial organizations. Therefore, while the realization of the aforementioned recommendations might not be attainable in the short term, the Council hopes that the focus on improving the identified bottlenecks will not be lost in the mid to long term. The Council would also like to use this opportunity to commend all of the frontliners on a job well done. And with that, we've concluded this edition of SXM Daily News. I am Valerie from Maarten, and just a reminder that this and other programs are available online. Simply log on to stmartenmediacenter.com for viewing. And on behalf of SXM Daily News team, we thank you for watching and plan on meeting you right back here again tomorrow.